I shared this interesting article here about spectralism. Who here has heard of spectralism before? This is a very interesting, like, brand of, let's say, modern music that developed in the middle of the 20th century. Basically, the idea of spectralism is that we are using the harmonic series in a very particular kind of way in the music. So if I open up Piano Tech, for those of you that don't know, I'm sure there are many that do, but for those of you that don't know, the harmonic series, like if I'm on C here, that would be the harmonic series, like if I just played it on a normal piano, but that's not the harmonic series in real life, you know? The harmonic series would be something more like this, and then this note would be down 14 cents, something like that. And then this note here would be down 31 cents. See? So if I play those back, you hear some. Those are really the notes that exist in nature, those notes. And then as you keep going up, that pitch is also down about 14 cents. It's the same pitch as this pitch. And then this pitch is down about 50 cents, and so on. And the higher and higher up you go, the intervals get smaller and smaller. So a lot of spectral music, and I'll just show you this article here really quickly. When you open up this article, it's very interesting because it shows you basically the way they think about music. So instead of notes, C, E, G, F, whatever. They think of them as frequencies. It's very interesting when you start to think about notes as frequencies because then you start to get a full spectrum of sound possibilities. When you look at Guarino's piece, he's thinking about spectralist tendencies. He's labeling things like 300 hertz. He's labeling things like 311 hertz. He's naming pitches in terms of their frequency instead of their pitch, instead of the actual note. He's not saying E. He's saying 300 hertz, 311 hertz. And if we go to a frequency, pitch to frequency chart, you can actually figure these things out. The notes are tied to a certain frequency. So like if we try to go to middle C, for example, or let's say A, this A right here is 440 hertz. This A down here is 220. This A down here is 110. Okay. And if we go back to A here, 440, this G sharp is below, but as you can see, there's 15 hertz in between that exists. So spectralism is very interesting in that they really are defining the things that we hear, not by these note names, which are arbitrary. These are just things that have been decided over time in the Western world, but they figure it out in terms of, they figure out what they want to hear in terms of the hertz, the cycles per second, in other words. Just wanted to give you like a quick primer on like how composers are starting to think differently about pitch, because up until like the early 20th century, especially, these were the pitches, you know, etc., without the microtones. Like those were the pitches that people were used to. And with the spectralism movement and the onset of computers that can play these exact hertz values, you start to get a wider possibility of pitch that's closer, ironically, to the natural world. They're using computers to mimic the natural world. And that's really the goal of spectralism.
I think it's quite interesting, especially with the timbre, because basically, at least as far as I heard, like in some pieces, it's just to make it to highlight like these harmonics that maybe normally we cannot hear, but just to, like to, if you are like looking like this, I don't know, like this image and have like many dimensions, it's just like passing like these harmonics in the front to perceive it like properly and make like more colorful. And
Yeah, and what happens is like if you're using instruments and you're trying to evoke, so like when Guarino had his workshop, it was interesting. I was there for some of it. Is that when she was playing pitches that were not the normal clarinet pitches, but they were like microtones, the timbre of the instrument changed because she was going against the natural acoustics of her instrument.
yeah, as well, like for example, as a clarinetist, I mean, fortunately or unfortunately, depending of how you see, it's like interesting in a clarinet that doesn't have like certain harmonics because the way how it's built, the instrument. Like for example, it doesn't have like a, it's not pair, it's the other one because it has like the fundamental, but then it's lacking the next harmonic that is the octave, and then it has the fifth, and then it doesn't have the next one, and then it have the other one, but I don't know
Yeah.
the word for
Even
that.
and odds. Even
Oh,
es pares y odds es impares.
thank you, gracias, Fernando.
Yeah, and I'm just looking at your guys' chat here. Did not think of it like using computers. I thought it was more analog, normal instruments thing. It's both. And actually the analog composers would use computers as well to kind of model with the acoustic instruments. Like for example, and Miriam says, I'm interested in analysis of orchestral spectralism with real instruments. Well, that's that's my wheelhouse. And that's how I was yeah, that's literally my wheelhouse. But I could show you really quickly some examples of that. So the most like quintessential piece that deals with spectralism in terms of real instruments. I mean, this is the granddaddy of them all. Yeah, this piece here starts out with this like E, this low E. It's like crazy. But yeah, this piece here is like quintessential orchestral spectralism. It's like literal. It's like literally the harmonics. So like what I was playing for you on the C series, I mean, he was doing that, but starting on E, etc. He's like, hey, these are the pitches. There are composers like my teacher at Columbia, Georg Haas. He has this piece called the String Quartet. Yeah, the second string quartet, where he starts off with harmonic series kind of stuff on C. This second string quartet, like if you want easier way to analyze spectral music, like this is the piece, second string quartet by Georg Haas, because he introduces the fundamental pitches first in the first like 30 seconds or so. And then he starts introducing your seventh partial here, your eighth partial, ninth partial, etc. He does it very slowly until you get everything here where we stopped. And then it kind of breaks down and he moves on to something else here. It's a 20-minute piece, by the way. It's like a lot of stuff happens in this piece, but this is a really interesting example of like introducing the harmonic series to us as a listener without like overwhelming us head on in the beginning. And partials, the other piece I showed you is another good example of that. I'm not saying, by the way, like any audience is going to get these pieces. That's not what I mean. I'm just like from the perspective of us like studying composition, these are like in my opinion, the best two pieces to start if you're thinking about like studying spectral acoustic music.